Hi, everyone. My name is Marilyn. I am 75 years old and I am a coronavirus survivor. It wasn't supposed to happen to me. I have been teaching Qigong for 18 years and I was doing 6 classes a week here in my city. And Qigong is all about the lungs and diaphragmatic breathing and simple, easy movements. I was in Portugal traveling. I was on a bus, sitting behind a bus driver on a bus tour, and the driver was sick and coughing and coughing. The next morning, my friend woke up and had a sore throat. The next day, I woke up and had a sore throat. And the third day, we were coughing. And the fourth day, I had a terrible fever. And I knew intuitively that I had the coronavirus. But where we were in Portugal, in the Algarve, there was no signs or talk of the virus at all. The beaches were crowded, the restaurants were crowded, the ones on the beach. As our time there went on, we both got very, very ill. We knew something was very wrong. We flew home, the airport was empty. We were trying to hide that we were sick. We were afraid we'd be quarantined in Portugal. We landed in Toronto, went to a hotel. We're too sick to even take the bus home. Spent an extra night trying to get some energy. And then we got home and I knew something was terribly wrong. I was really coughing a lot and I had no energy whatsoever. And I could barely make it from my bedroom to the bathroom. And as I spent a couple of days in bed, I lost all appetite. I knew intuitively I had the virus, but my logical brain just couldn't accept it because after all, I was a Qigong teacher and I shouldn't get something like that. And so on the third day at home, I knew something was terribly wrong. I called an ambulance and they picked me up in all their garb. Was brought into emergency. It was like being on another planet. I was the very first COVID patient in our hospital. So basically, I was a curiosity. And doctors were coming in to see me, all in garb. I was just barely hanging on. I was put in isolation for 2 days, and I was getting progressively worse. I had a doctor come up from ICU and asked me some hard questions. Did I want to be put on a ventilator if it came to that? And I said, absolutely not. I wasn't afraid to die, and give me morphine and let me go. So the next morning I was down in ICU. 4 times I was asked if I wanted to be on a ventilator. 4 times I said, absolutely not. Not afraid. I wasn't afraid to die. I wasn't afraid. They kept asking me, are you scared? And I kept saying no. As a matter of fact, Qigong has taught me to completely relax. It's a terrible feeling not being able to take a breath. It's a terrible feeling like you don't have enough air to speak. All I could do was make really weird sounds, moaning and groaning. I was giving hydroxychloroquine. I was given azithromycin, that antibiotic that I can't remember for some reason. I was given bags of magnesium because my magnesium level was so low, and I was given lots of oxygen. I had what I call almost a near-death experience. One night when I was considered fairly critical, and I was refusing all life support. And I went into this space. It's hard to explain, but it was, put it in a heart context, I felt like I was one with divine intelligence or one with God or one with the universe. I was floating in this incredible space and I was told I would survive this and I would be fine, which I did. And 2 days later, I was back up in isolation and getting better rapidly. And they were very surprised. They thought I was athletic, and I kept telling them, no, I do Qigong. My lungs seem to be a little stronger than the average person my age. The hardest part was after I was out of ICU and I was back in my room, I started to see fear in the eyes of the doctors and the nurses. And they suddenly put me on what was called limited medical contact. That was awful. I had no contact with family other than using my cell phone. I had no contact with friends. And now I was having very limited contact. One person, morning for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. While I was in the hospital, I had to deal with our local television show talking about me, somebody in my apartment building criticizing that I had been here and maybe I had touched things, so I had to deal with the shame and the stigma of being sick. And that was awful. And then when it was time to go home, I had no way of getting home. My family was in quarantine. My friends couldn't come because they didn't know at that point if I was contagious. I couldn't go home by taxi, and I couldn't go home by ambulance transfer because having called 4 companies, they refused to come and get me. It was 7 hours of hell. It was worse than not being able to breathe, feeling trapped, the nurses not being able to help me, and finally coming in and saying, we are having an emergency meeting tomorrow night because we know we're going to deal with this in the future. You have to stay another night. I was dressed. I was psychologically prepared to go home. And I said, I am going home. I'm not staying. And at that moment, my granddaughter, who's a PSW in the hospital, for the first time ever, FaceTimed me on my phone. I answered the phone. I was sobbing as best as I could when I can't breathe. And she said, I'll be right there. So she did what's called PPE, the goggles, the mask, the clothing, and I was masked and gloved, and she had to set her car up a certain way, and she picked me up and drove me home. Much to the validation and support of the hospital staff, when I left, they were all clapping and cheering, and that felt really good. But when I got home, I had to deal with fear from other people. People were afraid to talk to me. They were afraid to get close to me. I mean, I'm talking 6-foot distance. I was receiving food at my patio door. I live on the ground floor. That was delightful and awesome. But I was absolutely paranoid. I was scrubbing my hands till my hands were raw, was wiping down surfaces. But every day I was in contact with the public health department. They would call and check up on me. Finally, the head infectious disease doctor for public health told me I had complete immunity. And my family doctor called me and said, if I could be anyone on this planet, I would be you. You are safe. You can't get it and you can't give it to anybody. And then the doctor at the hospital called and told me the same thing. With that, I can tell you, it's a sense of complete relief and total freedom to no longer have any fear about catching the virus is an experience that I hope everybody can have. So in that process, even though I was really deathly ill at one point, what I learned is that people survive this virus. It's not a death sentence. Many people have gone through this, as they say, if mild symptoms. I've had so many supportive emails, and I've also had many emails from people telling me they are convinced they had the virus in January. They were really sick. They had all those symptoms, but back then it wasn't really being identified. So it gives me hope, and it inspires me to know that so many people have had it and so many people have recovered. Personally, I don't believe the number of people that we're being told. I would say to everybody, use discernment. There's disinformation, there's misinformation. Even for myself, I have people say, how do you know you're immune? Because 2 infectious disease doctors told me. But people don't believe it. So there's been some shame I've had to deal with about, teaching breath work and then having my lungs fail that way. There's been embarrassment, self-judgment, which I've had to work through. It's been a process. And I still have symptoms that people rarely talk about. The hydroxychloroquine affects your tongue. The virus affects your tongue. My tongue was swollen and raw, and I still can't taste. So I've lost quite a bit of weight. I'm forcing myself to eat, but coffee tastes like crap, and the food that I love doesn't taste right to me. And I know that that will pass, but I wanted to share that because you don't read much about those kinds of symptoms. Your smell goes, and it really affects your taste buds on your tongue. And so I'm still dealing with that. I'm still dealing with fatigue. It's been 2 weeks since I've been home, but I'm out walking, I'm exercising, I'm doing my Qigong, and I'm feeling stronger and better every day. So the hardest part, even for me, has been dealing with the isolation. I just want to go and hug people and talk to people and tell them my story and let them know they can survive this, and it's not, the bug doesn't jump 6 feet, it falls to the ground. So I stopped washing my hands in my home. I stopped disinfecting groceries. I've stopped doing all of that, and it's made my life easier. I would suggest the best thing for all of us is to get outside, get in the fresh air, get your feet on the ground, go for walks, eat well, and let go as best as you can of any fear. To me, fear is way worse than the virus. Fear really causes a deficiency in your immune system. It suppresses it, and it makes you more susceptible. So envision a positive earth with people connecting and loving each other, where everything is pristine and clear, where out of this comes a transformation for everybody, where we get to create something new and fabulous. That is my wish, and that is what I intend every single day. I see all of us creating a new earth. Many blessings to all of you, and I wish you well. Much love, and thanks for listening. Bye for now.